Hello again, honky tonks. I was going to make a video about that photograph, but it's nothing. It really isn't. I don't think so anyway. People are making a massive mountain out of a molehill, out of a doctored photograph. Anyway, what else is there to speak about other than Lee Anderson defecting from the Tories, or the so-called Tories, the con socialists, to the Reform Party? And I'm not buying it. And before I explain to you why I've come to that conclusion, let me just give you a little recap. I don't trust Richard Tice, and I think Reform establishment. I've said before many a time, the Reform Party has been presented to us wrapped in a package with a big bow on top and a tag on it that says alternative, when in fact you open up that package, look in the box, it's establishment inside. Richard Tice says the right things, but his actions are quite different. Praised Zelensky, was an advocate for the jab, and then there was that really, how can I put it? It was a mistake. His core voters really disagreed with him taking part in that convoy to take medical supplies to the Ukrainian army. So really, Richard Tice doesn't really represent his core voters, which are true conservatives. So there's that. And then there's the people he picked as candidates to stand for reform in by-elections. First of all, there was Stephen Chilcot. Now, he's been exposed as a mole for ultra left-wing extremist organisation Hope Not Hate. He gave information to them about Tommy Robinson. This was on Tommy Robinson's Twitter page. Then there was Simon Danchuk, the former Labour guy who was kicked out for sending illicitly sexual messages to a 17-year-old. And then there was George Galloway. Of course, George Galloway didn't stand for reform, but he has proof that Richard Tice asked him to stand in the recent by-election, which he just won, for reform. So that's that. Big, massive red flags, if you ask me. Now, does this sound like the leader of a party, and a party that is alternative and gives a voice for politically displaced people like myself and you? No, in my opinion, it really doesn't. We deserve better. We deserve better than to have just something wrapped up and thrown at us for us to accept it. I'm not accepting it. You guys do what you want, but I ask you, just dig deeper. Look into things. Look at what's happening right in front of your eyes. And now there's Lee Anderson. Now, I think Lee Anderson is an opportunist. He took his time defecting to reform. This is a guy who has been in more parties than Elton John. He's the MP for Ashford in Kent, Ashford. I should have written this down, but that's the thing with doing it off the cuff. You know what I mean. He's the MP for Ashford, and he started off with Labour. He then jumped ship to the Conservatives, and now he's with Reform. This is the guy who voted against the government, against Rishi Sunak recently, and then regretted it openly and said he wished he hadn't done it. This is the guy who once claimed or called Reform not really a political party, and said that Richard Tice was a pound shop Nigel Farage. These are things he said. When he said those remarks about Sadiq Khan being in the pockets of Islamists, the Reform 2IC, is it Ben Habib, completely dissed him, said he was Islamophobic and racist. And now Lee Anderson has joined them. Now let me be clear. Reform may be a couple of points behind the Conservatives and they may overtake them in the polls. But they're not going to win jack shit anyway. I think Lee Anderson is going to get voted out at the next election. Remember, he started off as Labour. And all this has done is made people who are unsure about voting for reform now suddenly think that they realise that Lee Anderson is the Messiah, and in a knee-jerk they've switched over simply because he said the words, "I want my country back." Now, how long have we waited for establishment politicians to say those words, "I want my country back"? Why has he waited until now to say it? Something just doesn't add up with Lee Anderson. Not one bit. And if you disagree with me, fine. Fine, just dig deeper. Just look at what's happening. Like I said to you, Lee Anderson isn't the Messiah. He's not a very naughty boy either, but I don't trust him. He's waited this long to jump ship. Apparently, there are 9 other Tory MPs in talks with Reform to join them. But if their conscience were clear, they'd jump ship immediately. Why negotiate? Like I said, it just doesn't add up, does it? Me, if I was a Conservative MP, I wasn't happy with the way things are going. You know for a fact Labour are going to be the government in the next general election. They're going to win in a landslide. That's where the protest vote is going to go. It's not going to go to Reform. It really isn't. That's just my opinion. And I'm just judging things on how the wind blows. Though Reform have made strides, those steps have been small. They haven't been significant enough. Lee Anderson is their only MP in Parliament, and that's only because he defected. His constituency are going to vote Labour. They're going to kick him out. You can see it happening, folks. And it'll be a vicious circle, Tories and Conservative, until we get a real alternative. And I'm sorry, folks, Reform isn't it. It really isn't it. Look at the way the mainstream media are suddenly pushing them. They are pushing Reform more than the other little right-wing parties. Britain First, where do you see them in the mainstream media, for example? And others. The mainstream media keeps them under wraps, and they're pushing Reform, and they're pushing Reform for a reason. And that reason is Reform is establishment and they are a distraction. That's what I think. Am I sounding too much like a conspiracy theorist? You tell me. If I was that much of a conspiracy theorist, this video will be about that bloody photograph of Kate and her kids. Everyone's saying stuff like, Kate's dead. She's held... I mean, Unity News Network said that she's being held hostage. I used to really like that channel when it was on YouTube, but there we go. Each to their own, innit? People do go their own way. Anyway, that's what I think. That's my opinion. Please let me know what you think in the comments as usual. And I'm Paz49. Thanks for walking with me. And until the next time, Roger Trout.